All right, guys, let's continue on in this path toward dissolving depression permanently. So tell me if this rings true for you. Wouldn't you say it's a bit of a weight trying to be a good person all the time and then coming up short, the majority of the time, and then feeling bad about it? We're going to knock off some of that weight in this talk. All right, guys, so we're going to continue on from the last talk where we looked at the prism of virtue. And if you remember, we were talking about the fact that virtues, and you can name any of them, patience, forgiveness, honesty, all of these things, these virtues come out in the relationship of the moment. That we actually need what's happening in the moment for these virtues to come out. This is a natural process. And remember, we talked about the woman who had approached a restaurant. We just did this little thought experiment. She was approaching the restaurant, the front door, and ended up tripping, falling on her way in. And in that situation, you're there eating and you see this happen. And so you immediately rush to her assistance. And you can tell that it's been a hard day for her. Maybe she was crying. And you could show compassion in that moment. There was empathy. You told her it's going to be okay. And what we were saying was that, well, imagine if she just walked in the door, didn't trip, didn't fall. Would you be able to go up to her and show her all those same emotions, all of those same virtues? And the point was, well, no, I actually need that situation. And when that situation appears, out come these virtues effortlessly. And so what we were saying is that we are not really the possessors of these virtues. And this is going to be an important thing to keep in mind when it comes to knocking off this weight of always trying to be a good person. So let's bring up the prism of virtue that we talked about. Okay, so here is that prism of virtue. Now, what we were saying was that when we are present in our life, and that's the base of the prism here called presence, when we're present, we are in direct relationship with the actual moment as it's unfolding. And so the need of the moment is very apparent to us. You know, if we had just been gabbing with a friend and didn't even notice the woman fall, there would have been no opportunity for those virtues to be drawn out of us. So we had to be present to what was happening. And so this presence, we talk about being mindful, being aware, being alert, being observant of the moment. When we have a moment where something like that woman falling as she's walking into the restaurant, when we encounter a moment like that, it's a kind of forced presence. Meaning the demands of the moment are so great, they jolt us, they shock us into being present, and then we rush to assist the woman. And so what we're talking about is not so much relying on a forced presence like that, but to work at a conscious, voluntary presence. To be dropping our personal self-centered life for a moment or for an extended period and just being wherever we are, being alert in the room that we're in. This will be a great delight to you one day as you work with this more and more, to be able to sit in a coffee shop and just be aware of the moment. Have this presence within you. Because when this presence is within you, what we would call the light of awareness, this light just rushes in, and this is something you will be able to perceive. You don't have to believe this. You will have to test this out. That, yeah, that's true. When I'm awake and aware, a kind of alertness rushes into me. And I know it sounds like, well, you're describing the same thing. It isn't really the same thing. You work to be present in this moment, and suddenly an awareness that is knowing everything that's going on in the moment rushes into you. And out of that comes all of these different virtues. patience, kindness, presence, all of these things, innocence, faith. Now, the world tells us, be somebody. Be a good person. Be virtuous. And would you like a huge sigh of relief at this point in the talk? Just as we saw in our thought experiment, it is not your responsibility to be a good person. This is something you do not have to carry around with you as something you have to tend to like a child. How am I going to be a good person in this moment? The way we would tend to a baby. You don't have to tend to this concern. As we looked at a moment ago, all of these virtues will come out of you effortlessly. Whatever is appropriate for the moment will come out of you naturally because of the need of the moment and you being aware of that moment. Never again do you have to walk around trying to be seen as kind, pretending to be patient. See, this is another thing, another huge relief. We know what it's like to live in this state of pretense, where I'm pretending to be kind. I'm pretending to be not bothered by this other person. I'm pretending to give forgiveness to another person. If you've ever felt yourself just worn out at the end of the day because I can't handle all of this pretense, and maybe those words wouldn't quite come to you that way because some of these things would be too much of a jolt, too much of a shock to see that directly. But maybe you can look back on it now as we talk about this and see, yeah, man, I was pretending my whole way through that party, or I was pretending my whole way through that tough situation at work. It wasn't the real virtues. Well, this is why you felt that awful exhaustion at the end of the day. Because we're not supposed to be wielding these virtues. It's not in our power to create them and make them appear in the moment, but you can be present to the moment. And that is where they flow through. We're talking about escape from this kind of social pretense, which also, by the way, leads to social anxiety disorder, trying to be perceived as a good person. How about this? How about the fear of public speaking? Also, a direct result of this really theft of virtue. Remember when we looked at that, the theft of virtue? Meaning always trying to come off as a confident, strong person. And then when it does happen in a given moment, I then say, well, that's me. I'm confident. I'm strong. I'm a great speaker. Here, let's bring up the image about that. We said when for some reason we get celebrated in the moment, and then we begin to call ourselves by that strength, lay claim to it. Because none of these virtues are actually ours, we're actually committing a theft. We're attempting to commit this theft. But you can never actually possess these virtues. You will never actually become the one who's able to contain it, keep it for yourself. And the fact that the reason why I have this little guy here labeled with thief all over, these little tattoos that say thief, is that this is that pretense that you feel. You know you're just pretending your way through, that pretense, that awful feeling of angst internally, it can be that weak smile that comes across the face. That is basically a kind of confession that's happening automatically that you don't even have a say in. Your whole being is just radiating the fact that, well, I don't really possess this virtue. It's a knockoff. I'm just basically pretending here. And this is what leads then to despair and disappointment when I'm not able to live up to that virtue that I've laid claim to. All right. Oh, and by the way, when we do lay claim to this virtue, remember, life's laws are in hot pursuit. This is another way to represent that feeling of pretense, because life knows that there's something in us that is attempting to steal what isn't really ours. It's issuing a correction. It's really part of the mercy of life. That angst that we feel, that awful pretense, that's life wanting to reestablish order. So always keep in mind that real goodness is spontaneous. Real virtue, spontaneous. Drawn out of us naturally, effortlessly, and we don't have to do a thing to enact it. Isn't that a weight off the shoulders? I actually put down a note here also. I wanted to mention this because it's interesting to begin to contemplate these things. If you look at what's known as the 7 deadly sins, and I have the list of them here. So they're pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. When you look at what's the nature of those 7 deadly sins, what do they spring out of? And in every case, you'll see it is this tendency to want to single myself out, make myself the center of the moment, put myself first, be noticed, have these things all for myself. So it's me at the center of every single one of these. And then when you look at the 7 deadly sins have sort of their offsetting corrective condition, what removes that sin, as it were. Now, really, what we've went through in this entire course is really the removal of whatever you want to call these things. You can call them sins, you can call them weaknesses, you can call them places of ignorance. But anyway, when you look at these side by side, so what is said to offset or overcome pride is humility. Now, don't think of it in terms of overcoming it. Again, we can't go out and apply humility as though we've got it on our tool belt and we're going to crush pride using our humility. That's another act of believing in my own virtue. These things will all replace those 7 deadly sins naturally. You don't have to worry about how to do this. But instead of pride, there's humility. And in humility, what's happening there? Something other than me is being placed first. That's the very nature of humility, to take this lower position, to recognize something that is greater, something above. In the place of greed or covetousness, there's charity. There again, putting the needs of others before my own. There's lust. In place of that, there's chastity. Where lust is this, I want all of this, and I want this now, and I want a lot of it. Chastity is this temperance, this metering of that whole impulse, a kind of right throttling of it, kept quietly in check. How about envy? In place of envy, or offsetting envy, is gratitude. What's the nature of gratitude? Where envy is, again, me first. It's saying something like, I want what they want, or I want what they have. Instead of that, or I want to be what they are. I suppose I want what they have is more like greed. But envy, I want what they are. I want to be in their position. Gratitude takes me out of that spotlight and recognizes the laws of life at work in my own life. That's what gratitude is. You can work through every one of these and see this. For wrath or anger, the offsetting virtue is patience. Again, patience clearly is putting the need of something else ahead of my own demand. And what's interesting in this case, and it's the case with all of these, if I'm putting the need of somebody else before my own, I'm actually putting the need of myself before this interior self-centered demand. The need of my own. The need to not be pushed around by this interior insistence or by this interior gloom that likes to bring up pictures from the past, that likes to bring up remembrances of what it's missing out on. Okay, so let's continue on from those 7 deadly sins. When I don't put myself first like that, like we're discussing here, just as I was sort of hinting at, we end up actually putting ourselves first. The real you is put first. That internal structure that's built out of that my personal story, my personal past, all of this residue of the past, where we took hold of things and made a personal self out of it, that then gets insulted or praised, and it goes from feeling bad to feeling good, then back again. By not putting that whole structure first, which is a fabricated structure, you weren't actually born with that personal story, a fabricated structure. By not putting that first, even if it seems like I'm putting somebody else ahead of me, I'm putting the need of this moment ahead of me, that is putting yourself, your real self, first. If you've ever heard the idea, any genuine action is actually an action that helps the whole of the world. This is why. I put somebody else first. Actually, that's putting me first. The real me. Because in that action of putting that other person first, I'm the first recipient of these virtues that come out of doing that. Not my virtues, again, the virtues that come out of that light of awareness when I'm present to this moment. So I don't need to be a good person anymore. I don't have to worry about that at all. And just think how contrary that is to what the world says, the way it raises us. Well, of course this is going to be different from the way the world raises us. I mean, the world is filled with people who are unhappy, having only these little brief moments of respite from that. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't mean, when I say we don't have to worry about being a good person anymore, this doesn't mean go out and lie, cheat, and steal, and do all of these barbarous kind of things. You have to see the principle behind what's being said. That to call myself good, to try to be good, is an imitative act. It can't ever be done where the real, genuine principle is coming through. If it's premeditated, it is not the real, genuine principle. That's the fact you have to see. Then you realize, wow, I have to stop trying to be good. Because that's the real, if you want to use the word sin in this case, that's the real weakness. Remember, if you've ever heard pride is the principal sin, it's putting myself first. Calling myself the one who is the center of the universe, what's special in the moment. And now here again, when you actually do this, you will find the real you that is the same center of this moment as is that person being the center of their moment, this person being the center of their moment. All of us, these droplets, who, when we are present to the life we're in, the whole of life is the center of that moment, but that is one and the same as us being the center, not the self-centered part of us. This is a lot to explore. It's fun to go explore this. To experiment with not having to call myself anything. You know, it is a delight to be in a room with somebody who is just working to be aware of what's going on in that room. Not that they're trying to be seen this way. Of course, this is something you'll have to watch for. When you first work with these things, there's a part that wants to be seen as virtuous because you are just being aware. So you'll have to see through that whole trick. Someone who's genuinely being aware in the moment won't be trying to get noticed. They'll know how to stay in the background, come forward when the moment calls for them to come forward. But it is a delight to be in a room with somebody like that. No longer trying to be seen as a good person. And you'll feel so much better. You'll feel so much lighter. So go to work experimenting with this. If you have questions, put it down in the comments. Come to our Wednesday discussions. You can send an email, but let us know what you find out. All right? All right, so we're moving into some pretty great stuff. This next talk that's coming up after this one, we're going to look at the fact of us all being one. You know, you've heard that idea. We are one. We're going to really go into it in the next talk. All right, I'll see you for that one.